Hello and welcome to another session of the My Solo 401k Financial, My Community Daily Webinar Series. We're excited today to discuss Guideline Solo 401k Review 2025. Are high fees worth it? If you have questions or topics, whether on this topic or even unrelated topics, please go ahead and chat those over, and we'll go through those topics sequentially. We'd love to discuss your questions, so don't hesitate to chat over questions or topics. The presentation is being provided for educational purposes only and should not be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice, nor as a solicitation. When making an investment decision, please consult with your tax attorney and financial professional. So while you're chatting over your questions or topics, we'll go ahead and start in with today's topic, which is the Guideline Solo 401k Review for 2025. Are high fees worth it? But first, we want to lay the foundation with some discussion around the basics, right? What is a solo 401k? Who's eligible to set up a solo 401k? So in simple terms, a solo 401k is for a self-employed individual. It's what's often referred to as an owner-only plan. So just like a big company can have a 401k, in other words, a company with lots of employees can have a 401k. In addition, a self-employed individual can have a solo 401k as long as it's an owner-only business. In other words, there are no non-owner, non-spouse, full-time W-2 employees. So the key, in order to be eligible, is that you're reporting earned self-employment income and that there are no non-owner, non-spouse, full-time W-2 employees working for any business owned by you or a spouse, if any. Some of the top eligibility considerations are, do I need a separate entity like an LLC or an S Corp? The answer is no. We have many individuals, for example, who operate as sole proprietors, and that's fine. Do I need to report earned self-employment income on my taxes? The answer is yes. You do have to report earned self-employment income. Now, that could be, for example, on Schedule C for a business that's taxed as a sole proprietorship. Even an LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship would report earned self-employment income on Schedule C. For an S Corp or a C Corp, earned self-employment income would be W-2 wages from your business taxed as an S Corp or a C Corp. Could be an LLC taxed as an S Corp, for example. And then lastly, if the business is taxed as a partnership, earned self-employment income would be income reported on line 14 of the K-1 that you receive from the partnership. Now, there's no minimum amount of earned self-employment income that you would need in order to be eligible to set up a plan. But of course, your ability to make solo 401k contributions is a function of your earned self-employment income. So if you don't earn a relatively high amount, you won't be able to contribute a relatively high amount either. Your spouse or business partner can participate in the solo 401k as long as they are reporting their own earned self-employment income. For example, they have their own Schedule C or they have their own W-2 from the self-employed business. You can have a solo 401k even if you have a W-2 day job, even if you participate in your W-2 employer-sponsored plan. Again, as long as you've got that separate earned self-employment income. Now, there are, of course, a number of providers. Guideline Solo 401 offers their own solo 401k. We've had individuals upgrade their plan from Guideline to our plan. And so some of the considerations for those that are looking at Guideline, one of the top considerations are the fees, right? So we wanted to just take the time to educate our community as far as the fees based on information that's published on Guideline's website. So they charge a monthly fee of $49. So that totals $588. I believe they refer to that as their administration fee. And then in addition, they charge an asset-based fee. In other words, as the value of the account grows, they will charge a percentage of the balance. Now that percentage seems low on the surface, right? It's less than 1%, right? It's 0.15%. But as you'll see on the next slide, as the value of the account grows, those fees can amount to a high dollar figure, especially as you compare it to the annual fee that is charged by my solo 401k financial. So for our solo 401k plans, we charge a 100% flat fee. So it's not based on the value of your solo 401k account. It's $125 flat fee as the annual fee going forward. So there's the initial fee of $650. That includes the $525 establishment fee plus the first $125 annual fee. Then starting 12 months later, it's $125, covers the second year, etc. So in the first year, our annual fee is $125, regardless of the value of the account. Whereas with Guidelines Solo 401k, in the first year, they're going to charge $738 if you add their monthly fee plus the asset-based fee, and that's based on an account balance of $100,000. And then as you can see on this chart, as the value goes up, right, $500,000, now that's $1,338. $1 million, it's over $2,000. And then as you'll see, as we go down the chart, over a 5-year period, over a 10-year period, and over a 20-year period, those fees will really accumulate. For example, taking it all the way to the extreme of $1 million account over 20 years, Guidelines fees would accumulate to over $41,000, whereas our fees would be $2,500. So the impact of those fees can be really tremendous over a longer time frame and as the value of the account increases. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, there's a lot of guidance out there just trying to educate investors, self-employed individuals, just around the drag that fees can have on one's account. And this is a great example of how even something that seems like a small fee can have a big impact when it's going to be a percentage of your balance and over time. So then the question becomes, okay, well, are the fees worth it? And so that's where it's also important to educate yourself in terms of, okay, well, what are some of the features that are not available with Guideline Solo 401k versus the Solo 401k provided by my Solo 401k Financial? So one of the top use cases for our clients is the ability to make mega backdoor Roth Solo 401k contributions. So that's not something that's available with Guideline Solo 401k, but it's one of the top use cases with our Solo 401k plan clients. In-plan Roth conversions, employer Roth contributions. These are additional ways that our customers are accumulating funds inside their Roth Solo 401k account. So an in-plan Roth conversion would entail where you move money from your pre-tax Solo 401k account to your Roth Solo 401k account. So that's taking pre-tax dollars that are already in the Solo 401k, could be pre-tax contributions that the individual made, could be pre-tax money that was rolled over from a previous retirement account, like a former employer plan or a non-Roth IRA. And then once those funds are in that pre-tax Solo 401k account, they'll move them to the Roth account. So that's, of course, going from a pre-tax status to a post-tax status. So that in-plan Roth conversion is taxable. It's also reportable. So going forward, now the money will be in a Roth account. So the subsequent gains are going to be potentially tax-free. So you got that potential for tax-free growth. But that is going to need to be reported as income in the year of the conversion. Needs to be reported on a Form 1099-R. So we handle that 1099-R as an optional free service for our customers. The other option here that we talk about is the employer Roth contributions. So historically, employer contributions, that's one of the buckets that you can fill with the Solo 401k, right? With the Solo 401k, in the words of the IRS, the self-employed individual is both the employee and the employer, and they can make both types of contributions. Historically, employer contributions were always made as pre-tax contributions, so reduce your taxable income. But since Secure Act 2.0, employer contributions can now be made as Roth contributions, provided that you have a plan that allows you to do that. And our plan does allow for employer Roth contributions. Per the information on Guideline's website, their plan doesn't support in-plan Roth conversions or employer Roth contributions. There's no indication that it does. Individual stocks. So with Guideline Solo 401k plan, in terms of the investment options, per the information on their website, it's essentially a menu of different funds that the individual can invest in. So individual stocks, right? It could be publicly traded stocks, right? Like Tesla or Netflix, what have you, are not able to be invested in through the Guideline Solo 401k. Whereas with the Solo 401k provided by my Solo 401k Financial, individuals can invest in a wide range of brokerage type investments. They can have their accounts at the bank or brokerage of choice. So it could be Fidelity, it could be Schwab, where they're going to have the ability to invest in the same type of investments that you can invest in through an IRA. So individual stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, etc. And then in addition, our plan will allow for investing in alternative investments, true alternative investments like real estate, crypto, precious metals, pre-IPO stocks, private placements, just to name a few. Whereas Guideline Solo 401k certainly doesn't support the ability to invest in those alternative investments. Checkbook control. So with our Solo 401k plan, customers have their accounts at the bank or brokerage of choice where they have checkbook access to the money. So under the rules, the Solo 401k owner acts as the trustee of the plan. They have direct checkbook access to the account. So they can act quickly to take advantage of those potential investment opportunities, right? That's a common use case for the checkbook. Whereas with Guideline Solo 401k, it's not going to give the Solo 401k participant checkbook access to their account at Guideline. Open at the bank or brokerage of choice, right? Of course, with Guideline Solo 401k, the account is with Guideline. Whereas with our Solo 401k plan, customers can open up their accounts at the bank or brokerage of choice. As I mentioned, Fidelity, Schwab, those are some of the most popular brokerage options. But we've also helped customers open up accounts at hundreds of different banks, credit unions, cryptocurrency exchanges, other brokerages, and we're very hands-on in helping customers open up those accounts. For example, with Schwab, we pre-filled the paperwork that Schwab requires to open up a free brokerage account for their Solo 401k. Flat fee. So as we talked about with Guideline Solo 401k, they charge an asset-based fee. That's part of it. They charge a flat fee and then an asset-based fee as well, where as the value of your account increases, the fees that are due also increase because it's a percentage of the balance. Whereas with our Solo 401k plan, it's totally flat. So regardless of how high your account balance goes up or the Solo 401k compliance support services you need, we charge a flat fee regardless. So you know exactly what you're signing up for. All right, well, that takes us to the end of the slides that we wanted to share today. Thank you so much for checking out the video. We'll go to the questions now. If there are more questions, please go ahead and chat those over now so we can make sure to get to those questions. We also please ask you to like this video. It helps us to get the word out to other solopreneurs, other self-employed individuals, freelancers, etc., just like you, who might be looking to, catch up on their retirement savings and are just trying to educate themselves. So I really appreciate that if you could like the video. So it essentially, in order to justify contributions to the Solo 401k, the individual needs to have earned self-employment income. So it's going to be income reported on line 14 of the K1 in the case of a business tax as a partnership with code A. If that's the case, that income can be used to justify contributions to the Solo 401k. So whether specific income would fall within that category, that's really not you first have to determine whether you have that type of income. So the question of whether or not you have that type of income is a tax question. Once you know the answer to that question, it's going to depend on the facts and circumstances. So yes, we'd have to defer to the tax advisor as far as that initial question. But once you know that you have that type of income, then yes, it can be used to justify contributions to the solo 401k. You'd have to run a pre-calculation where you take that amount less 1/2 of the self-employment tax, and that would be considered your earned self-employment income, and upon which you could then determine, or based upon which you could then determine how much you could contribute to the solo 401k. It's a great question. Thanks so much for bringing it. So again, if there are more questions, don't hesitate to chat it over. We also invite you to subscribe to our channels, whether you're on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn or X. We go live every day. If you subscribe, you'll get notifications of when we go live. You can hear the content that we want to share or come and ask questions, etc. So please don't hesitate to subscribe as well. We also invite you to our community. We have over 30,000 members of our community, other solopreneurs, self-employed individuals, self-directed investors. So there's a lot of great forums on there. So there's a lot of great ways to learn, to share the knowledge, to ask questions. There's also a library of videos of webinars. We have the industry's first AI. So it's totally free to join. All are welcome. You can join easily at mysolo401k.net/my community. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. All right, well, that looks like it takes us to the end of the session for today. Thanks so much for engaging, everyone. Until next time.